What's up, y'all? Before we get started, I just want to thank everybody for all the kind words and the love and support you've been giving me. Even more than the likes and subscribes, it really means a lot to me, being encouraged in this endeavor. You guys make me want to keep going at this and get better at it, and I promise I am going to work to get better. I definitely have a lot to say about these topics, and I enjoy talking about it. But I just watched the new episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I have some thoughts. So let's get into it. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 5, Truth. It starts with John Walker running into a warehouse, tormented by the shame of his actions and by the loss of his best friend. Sam and Bucky catch up to him just as he's reconciling with his actions, and he looks like he's about to get back into the fray. Sam starts off saying the right thing to him. You know, he tells him that it was the heat of battle and that the government's going to understand, they're going to consider his record. Then he says that John needs to hand over the shield. I question the wisdom of this. I mean, I get it for narrative purposes, why we need to get the shield into Sam's hands, but in that particular moment, are we worried that Walker's gonna kill somebody else with the shield? It seems like the priority should be Walker turning himself in more than anything. I mean, I'd say let him hold the damn shield until you get him where you need to get him, right? Taking the shield from him in that moment is very much, it's like you're defrocking him right then and there. Again, I get it narratively, moves the story along. As far as talking the guy down and getting him into custody, questionable move there. So needless to say, a battle ensues, and it is a grueling battle. And man, this was some good stuff. I mean, it's this grueling 2-on-1 fight sequence that harkens back to the end of Captain America Civil War, which was between Iron Man, Bucky, and Steve Rogers. But I gotta say, this was way more hardcore. John Walker seems like he's totally losing himself. And more, he's definitely trying to kill Sam and Bucky. And Walker's got Sam pinned, and and he grunts out, "I am Captain America," and just rips the wings off with brute strength. They actually have to break Walker's arm across the load of a forklift to get the damn shield off of him. I mean, it's pretty rough stuff. And the fight ends with Bucky holding Walker's leg and just swinging him while Sam is running like rocket powered with the shield. And he just swings Walker into the shield as Sam is flying into it, rocket powered, and bam! And they're all sprawled out. And Bucky picks up the shield and walks over to Sam and drops it next to him as he's laying on the ground. That also harkens back to a scene at the end of that fight in Civil War. And a majorly beat up Sam picks himself up, picks up the shield, and is trying to wipe the blood off of it with his hands. And then it cuts to the title card of the show. So this was the cold open. So Sam and Bucky have a debrief with Torres, which Bucky doesn't really stick around for. He's gonna go hunt Zemo. Sam and Bucky are grounded because Walker has caused an international incident, shocker there, and there's nothing that can really be done, and also that the wings might not be salvageable. And Sam tells Torres to keep them, suggesting maybe he's gonna give up being the Falcon? So next we have John Walker's disciplinary hearing, and the GRC or the US Senate, I'm not really sure which, they are really not trying to hear what he has to say about it. Clearly they're more angry that he has embarrassed the United States than they are interested in giving him a fair hearing. And he gives this fiery speech on how he's done everything they've asked him to do, and he's done it well, and that he is exactly what they've made him, and that he is Captain America. And I gotta say, there is something to his argument. So there's this gap between what the government and the world expects from an icon like Captain America versus the realities of being a superhero on the ground, trying to carry the burden of all those expectations. They set John Walker up as someone for us to dislike. I mean, right away. And when you dislike a character that easily, it's easy to start projecting things onto him. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of that stuff in articles and comments and fan reactions. I think the truth is that John Walker performed as well as anybody appointed by an American government committee would perform in those circumstances. He himself is aware that what he did in Afghanistan to earn 3 medals of honor was not something he would consider honorable. He has some self-awareness. No matter how exemplary a choice he seems like on paper, he's ultimately a product of that system that he's been created within. And he's unfortunately myopic. He's impatient. He's insecure about the role that he's been given. He's simply not Steve Rogers. He's not prepared for the super threats of the MCU. So yes, he absolutely needed to be stripped of his title as Captain America. But do those people understand what they asked him to do? I don't think so. So when they're stripping him of his benefits and threatening him with the brig, and he just turns around and walks away while they're talking, I was on his side. I really was. I felt it. So Walker's in the hallway with his wife talking about what they're going to do next. And then we get this entrance by, of all people, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, playing somebody named Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Great entrance, almost ruined by a silly line about these boots ain't made for walking. And she's coming up with all this, private interest swag, which knew was coming. In real life, somebody like Blackwater would have hit up Walker immediately. But Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine then tells Walker that he is a valuable asset and that he would be very wise to pick up the phone when she calls. Now, what do you think the odds are that she's really the power broker? I mean, maybe, could happen. I heard that her character is actually in the Black Widow movie. I mean, you don't book Julia Louis-Dreyfus for like a 1 or 2 episode cameo and then just bye-bye, right? I really liked her line about the shield not really being government property and actually being a legal gray area. Next, we see Carly and her cohorts returning to the home where all the internationally displaced people were living, finding that it has been raided by the GRC and shut down. I don't know where they moved all those kids, but apparently they were accused of aiding and abetting. So now you're seeing Carly has become more and more desperate, and she's going to do desperate back-to-the-wall terrorist stuff. And the next scene is Bucky catching up with Zemo at the Sokovia Memorial, gun in hand. Zemo tells Bucky what we've already come to understand from the previous scene, that Carly has become radicalized beyond salvation. Zemo urges Bucky to kill Carly, and Bucky says, no, we're going to do it our way. Bucky points the gun at Zemo like he's going to execute him right there at the memorial, and then, psych, it's just a setup for a very dramatic slow-motion shot of the bullets unfired raining from his cyborg hand. And then the Dora Milajes show up, and Zemo goes quietly into their custody. But not before Bucky takes the opportunity to cash in a favor. Ayo says that Zemo will be taken to the Raft. That's the high-tech floaty prison that was in Captain America Civil War, and that's where Zemo will remain for the rest of his life. Weird though that Zemo was actually locked up in the Raft at the end of Civil War and then at some point transferred to a German prison, so I don't really know how all that works. Sam goes back to Baltimore to talk with Isaiah Bradley, and we get a very hard conversation. And with that, we can now draw a parallel between the title of the episode, Truth, and the limited series from decades ago that actually was the story of Isaiah Bradley, known as Truth. Isaiah goes into explicit detail on how the American government basically ruined his life. This is exactly where I wanted the show to go from the moment they introduced Isaiah Bradley in episode 2. This conversation that they have in the living room is a powerful moment on the show. Isaiah's story is heartbreaking. It has an additional layer of tragic irony because Isaiah's mission to rescue his fellow soldiers is very similar to Steve Rogers rescuing Bucky and others in the first Captain America movie. Of course, the results were very different for him, and his treatment at the hands of his own government runs parallel to the real-life Tuskegee experiments. Of course, it's important to keep in mind that Isaiah Bradley is one more character in the story whose motivations are perfectly justified for what they have experienced and the way that it shaped their perspective. It doesn't necessarily mean that Sam's choice, though informed by what happened to Isaiah, it doesn't necessarily mean his statement that no self-respecting black man would ever want to be Captain America doesn't make that the truth. You know what I mean? Things then mellow out for a bit as Sam goes home and talks to his sister and decides what to do with the boat. And they have the great idea that maybe it's time to call in some favors from people who owe their parents. The mood then becomes more hopeful as we show the community coming together to work on the boat, although that gets a bit overshadowed by the return of Bucky and becomes more about Sam and Bucky and their dynamic again. And we have a cute moment of Bucky flirting with the sister, making us think, Bucky also comes bearing gifts from Wakanda, and one look at that case and you know they hooked it up. Cut to John Walker talking to Lamar's parents about what happened to their son. And he is trying to give them a comfortable lie that their son has been avenged, but he is setting himself up for having to really do that shit. Meanwhile in Madripoor, Sharon Carter is on the phone with Batroc, and she has a job for him. She apparently got him out of prison, and she can pay him twice as much to go do something now. I'm not saying she's the power broker. Her connection to the power broker is still pretty questionable, but more importantly, her whole motivations on whose side she's on, I mean, what she's even doing there and what she's about right now, that's really into question right now. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Bucky wakes up on the couch to the sound of Sam's nephews playing with the Captain America shield. And I think that's something we would all probably do. I mean, it's not like there's a risk of breaking it. So after a brief exchange with Sam's sister on the dock, Sam and Bucky then go back to Sam's house, which I never noticed before looks so much like a bayou plantation. So they're throwing around the shield against some padded trees, and it's pretty good to see the shield being thrown light. Like, you don't really see that. It's always being thrown with all the superhuman speed. So it's good to see the alleged physics of this thing as it's, bouncing and, what a softball throw is like. I gotta say, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the catching of the shield by the handle straps. It just seems really unlikely that a normal human being could throw the shield, have it bounce around, and then come back, and then you grab it by those straps underneath. Suspension of disbelief, right? But I won't gloss over the moment of Bucky apologizing to Sam for misunderstanding what it would mean for a black man to be handed the mantle of Captain America. I mean, I'm glad they reiterated that. People are going to be questioning what all this meant and what it was about. Bucky having that revelation definitely solidifies the idea more for the audience. And in turn, Sam puts his veteran counseling skills to work and puts Bucky on the path to reconciling his past actions as the Winter Soldier. Like I said, everybody gets to the heart of their character arcs. Sam says what might be the key takeaway from this whole episode, maybe the whole show: you gotta stop looking towards other people to tell you who you are. Sam then has another moment with his sister where they agree to keep the boat, and then we get the training montage. And I gotta say, it's pretty uplifting. The music is perfect. You're seeing him making mistakes with the shield, which I think is important. I think it's important to show that you can't always catch this thing and then it might accidentally decapitate you. The only thing that can make it better is to show Sam having to fish the shield out of the water after he throws it wrong or doesn't catch it or something like that. Although one scene of him doing flips in the air was clearly a stunt man. I mean, I'm not sure what they were thinking with that. They knew people were going to freeze and slow-mo it to see the face, and that is not Anthony Mackie. Meanwhile, Carly and associates meet with Batroc in a public park, and you gotta wonder why she's, Carly has a very distinct look. Do you think she would, I don't know, put on a hat or something? The Flag Smashers then make their move on the GRC, and the lights go red and the screens go all glitchy, so, very Resident Evil. And Sam opens up the Wakandan case to reveal. And I was gonna make a joke about Pepper Potts' head, but Nerdist or somebody already did that. If you know, you know. And then we have the mid-credit scene, or in-credit scene, I'm not really sure. It seems pretty late, honestly, to be called mid-credit scene. But we have John Walker fashioning his own shield. He's cobbling something together in his garage, and I think it's very cool that he's welding his Medals of Honor into the shield. But that shield is going to be a piece of shit. I mean, what does he have? He has nothing accessible to him that can compare to vibranium. I mean, I guess he just wants the metal weapon. I mean, I'm sure he can really cause some damage with it, but, talk about cosplay, right? So this might be the best episode so far. I'm a little torn between this one and the last one. They both have a lot of great things going for them. I'm very excited to see how this is all going to end. Next episode is the finale. I'll try to get a guest on here so we can bounce back and forth a bit. This concludes my recap and discussion for episode 5. So if you like what I'm doing here and you want to see more, please like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Cheers.